The World 2020 Champions India.
We're just a few days away from the T20 World Cup, and thoughts on everyone's minds, from players and pundits to fans alike, is who are the strongest teams? What weaknesses do certain teams have? Or if there are any threats they face and opportunities they could capitalize on? Well, I'll give you a small hint. For a certain team, their style of play seems to be the biggest threat. We'll get back to that soon, but for now, let's get right into the SWOT analysis for the teams in Group B. Let's first begin with Ireland. Ireland's biggest strength would definitely be their experience. They have been consistent throughout the day. Not only have they been consistent participants in all the major ICC events, but a fair amount of this experience has been against the bigger cricket teams as well. This experience would come in handy while participating in the World Cup. Ireland also have a strong batting lineup with experienced names like Paul Stirling, Kevin O'Brien and George Dockrell. On the squad list, there is no shortage of big hitters who could make vital contributions. In terms of bowling, Ireland's biggest strength would be their all-rounders. Talking about the all-rounders, Mark Adair and Curtis Camphor are two solid fast bowling all-rounders, while they have spinning options as well in the form of Simi Singh and George Dockrell. While we talked about strengths, it's time for the weaknesses. Ireland seem to be short-stacked on spin bowlers, with no specialist spinner to partner with George Dockrell. Although Simi Singh is an option, but they still miss out on someone who can choke the runs in the middle overs. On the other hand, in the batting department, Ireland's over-reliance on Paul Stirling is an area of concern, especially with Kevin O'Brien not being as aggressive as he used to be. This reliance on Paul Stirling to be the sole batting anchor puts excessive pressure on him and could potentially end up backfiring. When we talked about strengths and weaknesses, it's now time for the opportunities. So being in group with Scotland and Zimbabwe, Ireland would be having a good opportunity to prove their mettle and qualify to the Super 12 stage. Ireland are currently in better form than both the teams, and this year could be the one where Ireland showcase their potential. But they have a threat. Now you'll be asking, what kind of threat? So their biggest threat in the group stages would be the West Indies. The two-time World Cup winners are a team notorious for being heavy hitters in the T20 format, and Ireland have their work cut out heading into the group stages. Now let's talk about Scotland. Their solid batting lineup is one of their biggest strengths. With names like George Munsick, Kylie Quidzer, Matthew Cross, Callum McLeod among their ranks, experience at the highest level is something they are not short of. Now let's come to their bowling department. They have some good bowlers as well, especially in-form county cricketers Safyan Sharif, Josh Devi and Bradley Wheel lead the line and would be the biggest contributors. All-rounder Richie Berrington has also been in a rich form of leading to the World Cup and could prove to be a vital cog in the Scottish side. On the other hand, there are some weaknesses as well. Scotland lack a batter who can play an anchor role, although the batting lineup is stacked with explosive hitters, but someone who can hold the innings from start to end is something that they fall short on. Whether this would cause problems for them or not, we'll have to wait and watch. Also, their spinning department is not that great. Scotland's lack of a quality spinner might hurt them in the long run. Only relying on their pacers would mean that getting results in the main draw would become even more challenging for them. Also, Scotland's performance against the bigger teams have been poor and make for a terrible reading. But we'll have to wait for the main matches that how Scotland performs. Talking about the opportunities, Scotland is entering the tournament as underdogs. This lack of pressure could translate into the team putting in some memorable performances and maybe even turning out to be the dark horses of the tournament. Well, now let's talk about threats. So Scotland's lack of practice in between two World Cups, paired with the fact that they have never played in Australia, would certainly prove to be problematic heading into the main tournament. So playing in Australian conditions is the biggest problem for Scotland. Now let's talk about Zimbabwe. So the team's greatest strength heading into the World Cup would have to be their involvement in plenty of T20 action in the past few months. Before the qualifiers, they played Namibia and Afghanistan in T20 series. The catch here is that Zimbabwe did lose both the series, but they were victorious when it actually mattered, the qualifying matches. Zimbabwe's ability to turn those losses around and develop as a team is another strength that they have shown. They also have some great all-rounders like Sikandar Raza and Ryan Burl who offer balance to the team, and this is another thing they would be looking to capitalize on in the upcoming T20 World Cup. Well, on one side there are strengths, but on the other side there is one area where Zimbabwe is lacking. Their experience at the biggest stage is quite concerning. And this is quite visible, and they actually have to beat it around. Their nerves come into play, and at those times their players find it very difficult to stay on the pitch as they move out of the game quite early. This is a major weakness that Zimbabwe would have to deal with heading into the World Cup. There are plenty of opportunities this time for Zimbabwe because they have in this edition, Zimbabwe have an opportunity to bury their 2021 elimination by making it to the group stages. This even provides them with the momentum to compete for a Super 12 spot. And with both Sean Williams and Craig Irwin in the tail end of their careers, they would be looking to make a mark in their final T20 World Cup outing. Well, Zimbabwe is in such a group that the group itself is the biggest threat for the team. Now, a group with Ireland, Scotland and West Indies, it would be no easy for Zimbabwe to beat such sides. West Indies are almost certain to make it through to the Super 12s despite their recent mediocre form. Now that leaves Scotland and Ireland for Zimbabwe to lock horns with. Now, overcoming an Ireland that has been in exceptional form, capable of stretching both India and New Zealand, would be quite a task for the Zimbabweans. Now let's talk about one of the biggest teams of this group. Yes, I'm talking about West Indies. The Windies is such a team that cannot be taken lightly, as they are one of the biggest heavyweights in T20 cricket and have a reputation for being big hitters. In the bowling department, players like Alzarri Joseph have what it takes to turn the game on its head. Another strength the Windies have is their rich lineup of all-rounders. Names like Kyle Mayers, Jason Holder, Odean Smith and Raymond Reefer make the squad much more multidimensional. But Windies would need to work on their weaknesses, especially the bowling unit, which has a huge gap in the spin department, with Akhil Hussain being the only established spinner. There was actually a huge shock and disbelief as well when the West Indian selectors decided to ignore Sunil Narayan. The Windies' opening partnership is also cause for concern. Like Evan Lewis, Brandon King, Johnson Charles and Kyle Mayers are currently vying for the two positions, but the reality is that none of those possible combinations are actually that much threatening. The Windies side will also miss Andre Russell's batting, bowling, fielding in the squad, as the last link of the great Windies team will not be making the flight to Australia. Though Windies have had a rough patch recently, but they have opportunities in this tournament. They have lost some of their stalwarts, but this gives a huge opportunity for the new generation of players to come through and make their mark at the biggest stage. There are a number of players who can mark their name, who can register their scores in this tournament and showcase what they have got. And especially Nicholas Pooran can step up and revive his captaincy stint with the Windies. Now talking about threats, West Indies are actually the biggest threat themselves. Their slam bang approach, which consists of very little thought and planning to dealing with situations as the game changes, may come to haunt themselves. This also leads to inconsistent performances by the men from the Caribbean, as they have been let down by themselves on one or many occasions. they would need to work on this approach, and then the work is all done. Well, it looks like each team has its own strengths and weaknesses, and now it all goes down to whichever team can make the best use of their strengths while compensating for their weaknesses and turning their threats into opportunities. Who's going to do it and come out on top? We'll have to wait and find out. But before that, you can let us know what you think about these teams in the comment section down below, or by reaching out to us on our various social media handles.